arrested at least 12 people during this week's operation around the cities, and nearly half of those detained.
4:13 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota, December 22, 2025. The temperature had dropped to 18 degrees. Frost covered every window on the block. The mansion at the end of the street sat dark and silent, but 250 federal agents were already moving into position. This wasn't a normal raid. This was the dismantling of an empire built on trust, buried beneath respectability, hidden under the law itself. By sunrise, investigators would uncover a tunnel system stretching 1,700 feet beneath one of Minneapolis's wealthiest neighborhoods. They would seize 64 tons of narcotics. They would arrest 96 individuals. And they would discover something far worse than drugs. 10 children, sitting in the dark, waiting to be trafficked. If you want the full truth about what happened beneath that mansion, hit like so this video reaches more people. Let me show you how two respected attorneys built a criminal empire that fooled an entire city. Ayan Osman, 44, and Mahid Nur, 47, were not supposed to be criminals. They were Somali American attorneys, immigration defenders, civil rights advocates, community heroes. Their law firms handled over 1,800 civil petitions, more than 300 housing disputes, dozens of successful appeals. Families facing deportation called them lifelines. Judges trusted their filings. Clerks recognized their names without hesitation. Ayan was known as the calming voice, soft-spoken, empathetic. She ran legal clinics, attended community meetings, built trust through consistency. Mahid was the strategist, meticulous, organized. His paperwork never drew scrutiny. Together, they created something rare in legal circles. A reputation so clean it became invisible. That invisibility became their weapon. For 8 years, federal investigators now believe Ayan and Mahid quietly formed alliances with senior figures tied to the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación. The CJNG, one of the most violent drug cartels operating across North America. They didn't carry guns, they didn't move drugs personally, they didn't stand on street corners, they opened doors, they influenced paperwork, they ensured silence. And they allegedly helped move more than 4 tons of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl into the United States. Not through chaos, through structure. Comment exposed below if you're ready to see how deep this goes. The financial damage extended far beyond narcotics. Over $280 million vanished from community assistance programs across Minneapolis. Grants were approved. Outreach projects remained listed as active for years. On paper, services existed. In reality, families never received help. Housing programs never delivered housing. Case files were marked resolved without ever being properly closed. Audits were delayed. Complaints were redirected. Red flags were quietly neutralized. One immigration caseworker later told investigators she flagged irregularities in 2019. Her reports disappeared from the system. Her supervisor told her the issue had been resolved internally. It hadn't. By 2022, analysts at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network began noticing unusual patterns. Late-night wire transfers labeled as legal fees. Consulting payments that cleared without normal scrutiny. Shell companies with identical mailing addresses across 3 states. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but tunnels are not built for spectacle. They're built for repetition. The breakthrough came in August 2024. A confidential informant inside a regional distribution network mentioned a safe house in Minneapolis. Not a trap house, not a stash location, a conversion hub, a place where cartel logistics intersected with legal legitimacy. The informant described something investigators had never encountered: lawyers who didn't just defend traffickers. Lawyers who were traffickers. Surveillance began immediately. Unregistered vehicles arrived at the mansion between 1:00 a.m. and 3:00 a.m. Private security rotations far heavier than normal for a residence. Electrical usage spikes when household power should have been minimal. Ventilation patterns inconsistent with a standard basement. Cooling systems cycling in the dead of winter. For months, analysts watched without moving. They needed proof, they needed structure, they needed to understand the network before dismantling it. By December, they had enough. If this shocks you, hit like now. December 22, 2025, 3:47 a.m. Command authorization was issued from FBI headquarters in Washington. The operation was designated Code Red, maximum personnel, minimal visibility. At 4:13 a.m., more than 250 agents from FBI, ICE, DEA, and U.S. Marshals converged from 3 directions. No sirens, no flashing lights, no warnings. Engines idled softly. Boots hit pavement without sound. Tactical teams moved through the frozen darkness like shadows. The scale was rare for a residential neighborhood, but planners believed anything smaller risked catastrophic failure. They were right. At 4:47 a.m., the first breach team reached the mansion's front entrance. Reinforced doors. Steel shutters behind the windows. motion sensors along the perimeter. A battering ram struck the door 3 times, the sound echoed across the silent street, wood splintered, metal groaned, the door collapsed inward, agents poured inside, private guards moved into defensive positions, not panic, preparation. This was not a home. This was a fortress. The entire confrontation lasted 12 minutes. Several guards were subdued without shots fired. No federal agents were killed. Then teams reached the lower level. Behind a concealed panel sat a reinforced passage sloping downward into darkness. Steel-lined, climate-controlled, wired for power and data. The tunnel entrance was not crude. It was engineered. Type yes if you're ready to see what they found underground. The first underground chamber stretched 40 feet in length. Computer terminals lined one wall. Inventory scanners sat on metal tables. Sealed containers stacked on pallets reached the ceiling. Document archives spanning multiple years filled industrial shelving units. Along the far wall sat crates containing 2 tons of heroin and fentanyl, individually wrapped, barcoded, logged for transfer. Estimated street value exceeded $550 million, but the most disturbing discovery was not the drugs. 10 children, ages 7 to 14. Sitting inside the same staging area where narcotics were being processed. Frightened, disoriented, some had been there for days. Investigators believe the children were being prepared for transport as part of a separate trafficking stream. Human cargo moving through the same logistics pipeline as narcotics. Nearby, agents recovered 72 concealed handguns hidden across compartments, long rifles, tactical gear, thousands of rounds of ammunition positioned for immediate access. Encrypted hard drives contained shipment manifests, route maps, payment schedules. Internal communications tying the tunnel hub to distribution points across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Ohio. This was not a local drug house. This was an industrial-scale logistics operation. The tunnel system itself told the truth. Engineering teams later confirmed the main reinforced segment extended 640 feet beneath neighboring properties. When feeder lines and access corridors were mapped, the total network approached 1,700 feet, steel-braced corridors. Reinforced concrete poured in stages. Concealed electrical conduits, drainage channels, air filtration units, no municipal permits, no inspection records, no connection to city infrastructure. The construction would have required months of work, heavy equipment, specialized contractors, massive financial investment, and absolute secrecy. Share this so more people understand what was hidden beneath their city. Inside the staging chamber, one detail changed everything. 26 processing stations, each station assigned to a numbered manifest series. Scanning devices logged weight, packaging type, destination code, and timestamp. Every movement was digitally recorded. Analysts later confirmed at least 312 documented transfers passed through the tunnel system during its operational life, representing an estimated market value exceeding $480 million. The rhythm was consistent. 5 unmarked vehicles arrived in sequence. Containers were unloaded, scanned, cataloged, resealed, transferred underground. Tunnel doors closed, vehicles departed. Before sunrise, the neighborhood returned to normal. Residents left for work. Children boarded school buses. Joggers passed the mansion without suspicion. Above ground, nothing changed. Below ground, a criminal pipeline remained alive. But the tunnel was not an isolated discovery. As the sun rose over Minneapolis, simultaneous raids were executed across the city. 7:08 a.m. North Minneapolis. Agents entered a strip mall office labeled Immigration Consulting and Document Services. The waiting area was welcoming, soft lighting, posters about opportunity, pamphlets in multiple languages, a children's corner. Behind a rear door sat a forgery line, high-speed printers, industrial laminators, blank identity templates, stacks of official-looking forms, shipping labels, burner phone packaging, a workstation engineered to move people and cargo through checkpoints while legitimate law firms remained untouched. Encrypted phones and multi-state route manifests were seized. 7:22 a.m. Northeast Industrial Corridor. A cold storage warehouse behind chain-link fencing sat among ordinary distribution centers. Trucks arrived and departed like any legitimate business. Inside, pallets wrapped in plain film, teams cut sample seals, packaging patterns matched the mansion, label spacing matched, barcode structures matched. The count climbed fast. The 2 tons found underground had not been the ceiling, it had been a working load. Across the entire operation, approximately 64 tons represented what was staged to move next. Comment your reaction below if this shocks you. 7:49 a.m. downtown Minneapolis. A second legal office was entered under court authorization. Conference table, diplomas on the wall, neatly labeled folders. Behind a storage door sat ledgers, payment logs, transfer schedules, charity records, shell vendor invoices. Individually, pages looked harmless. Together, patterns emerged. The same names across unrelated cases. The same phone numbers appearing in immigration filings, tenant disputes, sealed criminal matters, mailing addresses repeating across jurisdictions. The missing files didn't feel lost, they felt relocated. One ledger detailed payments labeled as facility maintenance fees. Amounts ranged from $12,000 to $47,000, paid monthly for 3 years, total exceeding $890,000. No facilities existed. Another document showed wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Dubai, labeled as legal consulting fees, totaling $63, $4 million over 5 years. No consulting services were provided. 8:11 a.m. South Minneapolis. A simple rental unit functioned as a staging space. Crates, packaging tables, hidden compartments, tools laid out for daily use. Labels matched warehouse pallets, barcode prefixes matched seized devices. Handwritten notes mirrored the same nightly cadence, not carelessness, discipline. By mid-morning, detainee transport began. Couriers, drivers, security personnel, document runners, support staff, people who looked replaceable. By day's end, 96 arrests had been made, including primary suspects and key facilitators. But arrest totals were not the real victory. The real work began in interview rooms. If you believe justice matters, comment justice below. Investigators quickly realized the case was not just about drugs or tunnels. It was about how trust becomes a weapon. Ayan and Mahid had built something unprecedented, a parallel legal system that operated inside the legitimate one. They didn't bribe judges directly. They didn't threaten prosecutors. They didn't intimidate witnesses in obvious ways. They manipulated paperwork. More than 1,000 criminal drug case files were missing, misrouted, or quietly labeled resolved. Warrants expired without renewal. Hearings vanished from dockets. Defendants who should have remained traceable simply dissolved into administrative fog. During one 12-month period, $78 million moved through legal proxy accounts tied to shell entities that technically didn't exist. No automated flags triggered. No audits intervened. No oversight questioned the flow. This is how a city loses control, not in alleyways, not through gun battles, but inside filing systems. Inside approval chains, inside signatures no one questions. One senior investigator described it as institutional blindness. The system was designed to trust attorneys. That trust became the vulnerability. Ayan's reputation allowed her to file motions that were rarely challenged. Mahid's meticulous paperwork ensured his requests cleared without scrutiny. Together, they created a machine that ran on legitimacy. And for 8 years, no one noticed. The seized digital archives revealed even more. Movement logs that didn't resemble drug ledgers. No weights, no purity percentages, no product identifiers. Instead, sequences, head counts, rotation cycles, handoff windows. A disturbing pattern emerged. Every cycle repeated between 11 and 19 days, always pointing toward coastal transit zones. Los Angeles, Seattle, Miami. That detail forced a strategic shift. Minneapolis didn't need to be a port city. It didn't need container cranes or terminals. It only needed to be a quiet junction. A place where people and cargo could enter, fragment, and disperse along commercial arteries while remaining invisible inside ordinary flow. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The human trafficking component shocked even seasoned investigators. The 10 children recovered from the tunnel were not kidnapped in the traditional sense. They had been separated from families during immigration processing. Paperwork had been manipulated, guardianship reassigned to shell entities. Legally, they disappeared. One child, an 11-year-old girl from Honduras, had been listed as reunited with family in 2023. She had actually been held in rotation houses across 3 states for 18 months. Her case file showed approvals from immigration courts, signed by judges, processed through legitimate channels, all fabricated. The scope extended beyond Minneapolis. Investigators identified similar patterns in Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. Legal offices with identical operational structures, the same shell companies, the same offshore accounts, the same architects. CJ&G had not just infiltrated legal systems, they had weaponized them. By building networks inside law firms, they created something law enforcement had never encountered. Criminals who could erase themselves from the system while remaining fully operational. The financial trail alone took weeks to map. Over $340 million had been laundered through 47 shell companies between 2017 and 2025. Real estate holdings, nonprofit organizations, consulting firms, security companies, all connected back to Ayan and Mahid. One property alone, a commercial building in downtown Minneapolis, generated $4.2 million in rental income over 3 years. The building was listed as owned by a nonprofit providing immigrant legal services. No services were ever provided. The rental income was funneled through offshore accounts and returned as legal fees. Another shell company, labeled as a community development fund, received $7 million in federal grants between 2019 and 2024. $0 reached communities. Share this video before it's buried. The legal consequences are still unfolding. Ayan Osman and Mahid Nur face federal charges including drug trafficking conspiracy, money laundering, human trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Combined, they face over 200 years in prison. But the case extends far beyond two individuals. Investigators identified 23 other attorneys, paralegals, and court administrators potentially involved in the network. Some knowingly participated. Others were manipulated through false information. The distinction will take years to establish. One immigration judge in Minneapolis has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Emails recovered from seized servers suggest she approved over 140 questionable cases between 2020 and 2024. Whether she was complicit or deceived remains under review. The institutional damage is staggering. Trust inside Minneapolis's legal system has been shattered. Immigration cases are being re-examined, housing disputes reopened, criminal filings audited. Thousands of cases potentially tainted by corruption. Families who believed they received justice now question every document, every signature, every ruling. The CJNG's strategy was brutally effective. By embedding operatives inside legal systems, they created immunity through legitimacy. They didn't need to corrupt entire departments. They only needed to corrupt key individuals in critical positions, and for 8 years it worked. The tunnel beneath the mansion has been sealed with concrete. The properties connected to the network have been seized. The bank accounts frozen, but the damage spreads through systems, not just streets. Every case Ayan and Mahid touched must now be re-examined, every ruling questioned, every approval verified. That process will take years, and the precedent terrifies federal officials. If one legal team in Minneapolis could build this, how many others exist across the country? Type yes if you believe this investigation must continue. The children recovered from the tunnel are now in protective custody. Trauma counselors are working with each one individually. Reunification efforts are underway, but the process is complicated. Many families are undocumented. Some are still in other countries. Trust in the system has been destroyed. One child, a 9-year-old boy from Guatemala, hasn't spoken since the raid. Psychologists believe he witnessed things no child should ever see. His case file, like the others, showed legal approvals at every step. Guardianship transfers, placement orders, court signatures, all fraudulent. The broader community is grappling with betrayal. Ayan and Mahid were not distant figures. They attended neighborhood events, sponsored youth programs, donated to local causes. One community leader described the revelation as institutional heartbreak. People who fight for justice are supposed to be trustworthy. When that trust is weaponized, the damage cuts deeper than any raid. Federal prosecutors are seeking the death penalty for both Ayan and Mahid. The human trafficking charges alone carry that possibility. Their trial is expected to begin in late 2026. The evidence is overwhelming: ledgers, bank records, encrypted communications. Testimony from cooperating witnesses. But the case represents something larger than two individuals. It represents a failure of oversight, a failure of verification, a failure to question those who wear the armor of legitimacy. One federal prosecutor described it as the most sophisticated criminal operation he had encountered in 22 years. Not because of violence, not because of scale, because of invisibility. The mansion still stands on that quiet Minneapolis street, boarded up, marked with federal seizure notices. Neighbors walk past it every day. Some stop to stare, some avoid looking at it entirely. The tunnel beneath it has been filled with concrete and steel, but the memory remains. Hit like if you believe justice is worth fighting for. This case should terrify every American, not because of the drugs. Not because of the money, because it reveals how easily trust can be weaponized. Ayan and Mahid were not criminals who became lawyers. They were lawyers who became criminals, and that distinction changes everything. They understood the system. They knew where scrutiny was weakest. They exploited the assumption that attorneys by profession operate within ethical boundaries. That assumption nearly destroyed an entire city's legal infrastructure. Federal officials are now implementing new oversight protocols, mandatory audits for immigration cases, enhanced scrutiny of legal fees, cross-referencing of case outcomes with financial transactions. But the damage has been done. Families who trusted the system now fear it. Immigrants who sought help now question every attorney. Judges who relied on professional integrity now doubt every filing. The tunnel beneath the mansion was not the most dangerous tunnel. The tunnel was built from trust. And dismantling that tunnel will take far longer than breaching a door at 4:47 a.m. The fight against networks like this continues every single day. In cities across America, in courtrooms, in legal offices, in places that look legitimate on the surface. But beneath the surface, corruption runs deep. This is not a news about one mansion. This is a news about what happens when those who swear to uphold the law decide to break it. This is a video about betrayal at the highest level, and this is only the beginning. Comment exposed if you want to see more investigations like this. Share this video so more people understand what's happening in their communities. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next revelation, because the tunnels are still out there, and the next one could be beneath your city.